Hi, I'm Jeff Dixon. Welcome once again to this series as we look toward Easter called Easter eggs, where we're hunting eggs, if you will, surprises that become so much more meaningful as we think about the Easter event, the Easter story, and celebrate Easter once again. Today, we go once again to the cross, and we've been counting down toward Easter, looking at some of the things that were said on the cross. And this is Jesus as he looks out at his mother. And in John 19, verse 26, he says, "Woman, behold your son." Of course, he's talking to Mary. Mary is older now. By this point in her life, the hair at her temples may be graying just a bit. Wrinkles have replaced that youthful skin that she would have had when Jesus was born. Her hands are now calloused. There's been a lot of years along the way, 33 actually. She's raised a house full of children, and she is now standing heartbroken at the crucifixion of her firstborn. You have to wonder what memories popped up in her head as she stood there at the cross, gazing up at her son. The long ride to Bethlehem, perhaps, before he was born. A baby's bed made from cow's hay. Being fugitives in Egypt, maybe at home in Nazareth. Panic in Jerusalem. I thought he was with you. In that conversation with Joseph. The carpentry lessons. Dinner table laughter. And then there had to be a morning, and I'm going to assume it was a morning, that Jesus came in from the shop early, his eyes firmer, his voice perhaps even more direct. He had heard the news, John is preaching in the desert, and he took off his nail apron, dusted his hands, and with one last look, he said goodbye to his mom. In that moment, they knew things would never be the same again. In that last look, they shared a secret, because Jesus was now walking out into the world to begin the ministry that he had come to the world to accomplish. Mary learned that day that heartache can come from saying goodbye. From then on, she was going to love her son like she always had, but this time it was going to have to happen from a distance, because she would see, as the crowds gathered in, that there would be times that she would be on the edge of the crowd. She might have to love him outside of a panicked house on the shore of the sea. She would hear what he had to say, and she would hear the things that he would have to say, and there was such wisdom in those words. And yet there was a day that he had looked at her and said, "It's time. Goodbye." We say goodbye to a lot of people for a lot of reasons. And anytime that you are with someone, goodbye is always implied, because there always tends to be a moment where you have to separate and you are apart. For the most part, those goodbyes are not permanent. They are see you later. But in this moment on the cross, this is a goodbye that, even though Jesus never said the words, I think the glance at Mary was loaded with goodbyes. In a glance, there were memories. In a glance, there were moments that they had shared. In a glance, there was a reality of something that Mary had always known was coming. But if you go back to the Christmas event, she never could have imagined. It is a touching moment between a mother and a son in what is a very dark moment. And I think that time almost stood still as they communicated. Anybody that heard it, I'm sure, turned their head to look toward the woman, to the target of whoever Jesus was talking to. But she knew, and she heard. And she, maybe more than anyone else, saw the importance of the moment and was the first to have to deal with that first wave of heartbreak that came rolling in, seeing him die. And yet, Jesus wasn't so consumed with what he was doing for everyone else that he didn't have the time to think about his mom and that connection that they had together. See, one of the stories of Easter that always reminds me of just how valuable that Easter moment is the way that he's able to connect over and over again, even in the midst of his suffering, with those who are around him. It screams volumes about who he is. It certainly teaches us a lot about what he came to do. And it's a surprise, because most of us, in any given moment when our world isn't going the way we want, we become consumed with ourselves, and we don't really take the time to think about anybody else. And yet here we have Jesus once again thinking about someone else. It's a big deal. It's a great moment. It's a touching moment. And it is one of those moments that is a surprise, because for anybody else, it never was going to happen. But for Jesus, we come to expect it. And so, he is a God who does the unexpected. That's what the cross and the resurrection is all about. And he did it for you and I. And so just another surprise, another Easter egg we discover on the way towards celebrating Easter. I look forward to joining you next time.